As I've said many times in the past, there's another shoe that will drop, and there will be other shoes that will drop.
This constant drip, 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 to be able to get one more piece from one more story or something doesn't help the White House, doesn't help our investigation. Let's get it all.
It's really significant that it doesn't appear that when they had information that this person might be connected with the Russian government or a Russian national, that they didn't immediately call the FBI.
If there was a email suggesting the Russian government wanted to help you and you took the meeting, that's problematic.
Some reaction from Capitol Hill on today's bombshell revelation that Donald Trump Jr. was seemingly eager to accept, quote, incriminating information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government. Joining me now is Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, so lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. What was your initial reaction to this news? Do you want to see Don Jr. come testify on Capitol Hill?
Absolutely. Katie, I thought this was jaw-dropping. When I was shown these tweets by Donald Trump Jr. earlier today, I was floored. First, the idea that he would publicly choose to share these emails, and then what those emails said, that he was offered the opportunity to have a meeting with someone to get incriminating information about President Trump's opponent, former Secretary Hillary Clinton, that in those emails it was made clear that this offer was on behalf of the Russian government and their alleged ongoing effort to support his father's campaign, and that he would be meeting with a Russian government lawyer. That's what the emails suggested. And that his response wasn't to be shocked or concerned or alarmed. His response wasn't to say, I need to hand this over to the FBI, but to say, that sounds great. Where and when can we meet? And that he then subsequently organized a meeting with Donald Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, and his son-in-law joining Donald Trump Jr. This is really striking, and it puts to bed allegations that there was no collusion, there was no attempts, there was no efforts at connecting with the Russians. It's clearly now fact that Donald Trump Jr., when offered an opportunity to have a meeting with a Russian attorney who represented herself as having these materials, he gleefully accepted that opportunity.
Senator, it seems like you're agreeing with your colleague, Ron Wyden, about how this is, it's no longer a question that Donald Trump's campaign sought to collude with Russia. One, do you think that is the case? And two, is it a crime if they did?
Well, I think it's a legal conclusion that we should leave to Bob Mueller to reach. Whether or not this makes out the element of a crime and is something that's a chargeable offense. But this is exactly why it is so important that we continue to have a well-resourced, independent investigation led by someone who is a respected, long-term federal law enforcement leader like Bob Mueller. And it's why I think it's so important and valuable that we have a genuinely bipartisan investigation moving forward by the Senate Intelligence Committee and by the Senate Judiciary Committee, on which I serve. I think that's important so that the general public can have confidence that we'll get to the bottom of this. Earlier today, I saw Kellyanne Conway suggesting on television that this is the sort of thing every campaign does, that this is opposition research, and that there's really nothing to be concerned about here because no valuable information was exchanged. As someone who has stood for election several times, I'll say that's not the case. That opposition research is typically done by campaigns. Embracing information offered by a hostile foreign power, that's not typically part of campaigns.
Senator, I'm sorry for interrupting you a couple times, but your colleague Tim Kaine went a bit further. He said that this could potentially be moving towards treason. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that's a legal conclusion that I wouldn't yet reach. I think there's a lot of investigating yet to do, and I think the elements that would make up a charge that serious, I don't yet see. But I think it's important that we recognize this is exactly why we have to have thorough bipartisan investigations. This is a moment for senators, for elected leaders in the House and Senate to put aside partisanship, to think about what's in the best interest of the country, and to make sure that we get to the bottom of all this. It is striking to me how many different senior officials who were either leaders in the Trump campaign or in the Trump administration had meetings with senior with senior Russians or Russian individuals, forgot to disclose that as they were required to in the case of Mike Flynn or Jeff Sessions or Jared Kushner, and that this seems to me to be a pattern where if this group has nothing to hide, they've hidden a fair amount.
Speaking of that, and I want to get a couple more questions in, so I'm going to be quick.
Sure.
Jared Kushner was also in that meeting. He left this off his disclosure form. Do you think he should still have security clearance?
I think it would be high time to review that as to whether or not he deserves ongoing security clearance.
And then the other question I have is Donald Trump was in the building at the time. This meeting happened on the 25th floor. Donald Trump's office is on the 26th floor. We know he was in Trump Tower at 4 p.m. that day. Are you thinking that maybe there should be some sort of Senate subpoena request to find out whether or not Donald Trump went to that meeting?
Well, I think we need to have document requests go out that are wide in their scope. I think this takes us back to a fundamental question in a previous similar matter. Core question here is, what did the president know and when did he know it? Did he know about this meeting? Was he aware of this proffer? And I'm struck at how unsurprised Donald Trump Jr. seemed to be to get an email saying that the Russian government was trying to help his father's campaign.
And let us note that Donald Trump's lawyer has said that he was not in that meeting and he only learned about it a few days ago. Senator Chris Coons, appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Katie.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.